She mocked my handmade gift. Widow CEO took back the entire college fund. Welcome back and enjoy the story. The package was small, wrapped carefully in silver paper, tied with a ribbon she had kept from years ago. Inside it was a necklace, delicate, simple, and made with hands that once sealed billion-dollar deals and signed employee paychecks. It wasn't from a store. It was made with love, crafted during long, quiet evenings when the house was too silent and her heart ached for connection. It was meant for her granddaughter's graduation, a moment she had waited for with pride. She handed the gift over with a smile, eyes shining not with diamonds, but with meaning. The girl unwrapped it slowly, then held it up with confusion. "Is this it?" she asked, her voice flat. Then she laughed. "Mom," she said, turning to her mother, "Grandma gave me something homemade. That's so cheap." Laughter echoed, not from everyone, but enough to freeze the moment in time. The widow CEO sat still, the same woman who once had her name etched into corporate towers, the same woman who used her retirement to pay for this girl's tuition, room, board, and even her laptop. She had cooked meals for her, bought her clothes when her parents couldn't afford them, and stayed up late reading books to her when she was just a frightened little girl afraid of thunder. And now she was just a joke. The mother said nothing, just sipped her champagne. The widow excused herself quietly. No tears, no anger, just silence. That evening, back at home, she opened her desk drawer and pulled out the folder. Inside was the trust fund she had set up for her granddaughter years ago, enough to cover graduate school, a car, even a down payment on a home. She had kept it active, untouched, believing that her final gift would be one of security and future. She shredded it. She transferred every cent to a scholarship program, one designed for girls who had been raised by grandmothers. Girls who knew the value of sacrifice, girls who wouldn't laugh at a gift made by hand. The next morning, she received a phone call. Her son, frantic. He had just received a notice from the financial planner. The fund was gone. The money redirected. The daughter cried in the background, begging her to fix it, saying it was a mistake and she didn't mean it. But the widow boss didn't raise her voice. She just said, "Tell her to make something with her own hands. It teaches respect." Then she hung up. Later that week, she attended a small graduation ceremony, not her granddaughter's, but one held at a community center downtown. A dozen young women stood proudly, diplomas in hand, tears streaming as they read her name on the scholarship banner. One girl hugged her and whispered, "This means everything. I thought no one saw me." The widow hugged her back and smiled, because someone did see. For every grandmother whose love was measured against price tags, for every widow whose handmade offering was mocked in favor of something store-bought, there's a truth that cannot be erased. Value doesn't shine, it shows up, it stays, it gives without asking for applause. And sometimes, the most powerful gifts aren't the ones you give away, they're the ones you take back. Wabara Maxwell stood at her kitchen window, watching the maple leaves dance in the Chicago breeze. At 68, she still carried herself, with the poise that had once commanded boardrooms across 3 continents. Her silver hair was cut in the same precise bob she'd worn since taking over Maxwell Industries 30 years ago, and her eyes, sharp, observant, missing nothing, scanned the neighborhood with quiet contemplation. The house felt especially empty today. 5 years had passed since James's death, and still sometimes she caught herself turning to share a thought with him, only to meet silence. They had built their fortune together, brick by brick, investment by investment, beginning in a tiny apartment in Hyde Park, with nothing but ambition and trust. Now she occupied this elegant brownstone alone, its rooms echoing with memories and achievements that felt increasingly hollow as the years stretched on. With practiced fingers, Wabara reached for the delicate silver chain on her workbench. For months, she had been teaching herself jewelry making, a hobby that seemed ridiculous for someone who could afford anything from Tiffany's, but had become her solace in the long evening hours. Tonight was special. She was adding the final touches to a graduation gift for her only granddaughter, Naomi. The pendant featured a small silver compass, a symbol of guidance, of finding one's way, something she hoped would speak to the girl as she embarked on her journey into adulthood. The compass had been difficult to craft. Wabara had destroyed 4 attempts before achieving the precision she demanded of herself, the same precision that had made her one of Chicago's most formidable business leaders. She smiled, remembering how the business magazines had called her the Iron Lady of the Midwest. But that title felt foreign now. Here, alone in her kitchen, she was simply a grandmother, hands slightly trembling with age, crafting a gift of love. Her phone buzzed. A text from her son, William. "Don't forget, Naomi's graduation celebration tomorrow at 6. She's expecting you." As if she could forget. Wabara had marked the date years ago, watching with pride as her brilliant granddaughter navigated Northwestern University with the same determination that ran in Maxwell blood. What William didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Wabara had prepared more than just a handmade necklace for Naomi. There was also the trust fund, established on the day of her birth, now matured into a sum that would secure her future, far beyond graduation. Wabara carefully placed the finished necklace in a small velvet box. In her corporate days, she had negotiated billion-dollar deals with less care than she now handled this simple creation. She wrapped it in silver paper, added a ribbon she'd saved from her last anniversary gift from James, and set it beside her. "Purse for tomorrow." "She'll understand what this means," Wabara whispered to the empty kitchen. "She has to." But a shadow crossed her face as she remembered Naomi's recent transformation. The humble, kind child who had once climbed into her lap for bedtime stories had grown distant over her college years. Their Sunday calls had become shorter, less frequent, and increasingly centered around requests for extra money beyond the generous allowance Wabara already provided. There were the designer clothes, the spring break trips to places Wabara had only visited for business, the casual mentions of classmates' wealth that seemed to carry a hint of comparison. Pushing. These thoughts aside, Wabara poured herself a small glass of the scotch that James had favored. "To new beginnings," she toasted to his memory, watching the sunset paint Chicago's skyline in hues of amber and gold. Tomorrow would bring connection. Tomorrow would bridge the growing distance. She was certain of it. What she couldn't know was how those certainties would shatter, how a single moment would force her to recalibrate everything she thought she understood about family, legacy, and the true measurement of a person's worth. As the evening deepened around her, Wabara Maxwell sat quietly crafting her gift, unaware that she was standing at the edge of a precipice that would forever change the landscape of her carefully constructed world. The morning arrived crisp, and bright sunlight streaming through Wabara's bedroom windows as she prepared for Naomi's graduation celebration. She chose her outfit with care, a tailored navy dress that projected elegance without ostentation, paired with a single strand of pearls James had given her on their 30th anniversary. The pearls were her armor, her connection to a past, where she had known exactly who she was and what was expected of her. Today, venturing into the unfamiliar territory of modern family dynamics, she needed that certainty. The drive to William's suburban home took nearly an hour in Chicago's persistent traffic. Wabara used the time to rehearse what she would say when presenting her gift to Naomi. The necklace felt insignificant now, resting in her handbag, a small token compared to the educational trust that would be revealed later through the financial planner. Yet somehow, the handcrafted pendant carried more of her heart than the substantial figures on the trust document ever could. When she arrived, the celebration was already in full swing. William's spacious backyard had been transformed with white tents, floral arrangements, and catering staff weaving between clusters of guests. Wabara recognized few faces, mostly Naomi's friends from university and the social circles of her daughter-in-law, Elizabeth. William spotted her from across the lawn and approached with a glass of champagne. "Mom, you made it," he said, kissing her cheek. William had his father's height and her own calculating eyes, though he'd chosen law instead of business. "Naomi's over by the pool with her friends. She looks just like you did at graduation, minus the 1960s hairstyle." He chuckled, but Wabara detected something strained in his manner. "Is everything all right, William?" she asked, accepting the champagne, but not drinking it. He glanced toward Elizabeth, who was deep in conversation with another woman. Just the usual. Elizabeth went overboard with the party planning. We're still recovering from paying Naomi's off-campus apartment costs that weren't covered by your generous contributions to her education. There was a hint of both gratitude and resentment in his tone. The complicated tangle of an adult child who had achieved success, but never quite at the level of his parent. Barbara nodded. She understood the complexity of their relationship. William had always lived in the shadow of Maxwell Industries, even though he'd forged his own path as a corporate attorney. His marriage to Elizabeth, a woman from a wealthy but financially declining family, had added layers of unspoken tensions around money and status that Barbara had learned to navigate carefully. "I'll go find Naomi," she said, patting his arm. "And, William, I'm proud of you, of the father you've become." He seemed startled by the unexpected praise, then smiled, a genuine expression that momentarily erased the lines of worry around his eyes. "Thanks, Mom. That means a lot." Naomi was indeed by the pool, surrounded by a group of young women who all seemed dressed for a fashion shoot rather than a family celebration. Barbara paused at the edge of their circle, taking in the granddaughter she adored but increasingly struggled to recognize. Naomi had her grandmother's high cheekbones and determined chin, but where Barbara's expression had always been one of focused intensity, Naomi's carried a casual disregard that bordered on boredom, even on this day meant to celebrate her achievements. "Grandma!" Naomi spotted her and waved, though she made no move to leave her friends. "You came." Barbara approached, aware of the assessing glances from Naomi's circle. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, dear. Congratulations on your graduation." Naomi accepted a brief hug, pulling away quickly. "Thanks. Dad said you wanted to give me something?" The directness was jarring. Barbara had imagined a private moment, not this public transaction surrounded by strangers. "Yes, but perhaps later when—" "Oh, come on, Grandma. Everyone's curious now." Naomi's smile didn't reach her eyes. What did the famous Barbara Maxwell bring her granddaughter for graduation? Something in Barbara's chest tightened at the use of her full name, at the subtle mockery in Naomi's tone. But decades of business negotiations had taught her to maintain composure under pressure. She reached into her handbag and retrieved the small silver package. "It's not much," she said softly, "but it was made with love." Naomi took the package, her French manicured nails scraping against the paper as she unwrapped it with surprising haste. The ribbon, James's ribbon, fell to the ground unnoticed as she opened the velvet box. A moment of silence followed as she lifted the necklace, the small compass pendant catching the afternoon light. "Is this it?" Naomi asked, her voice flat. Then she laughed, a sound that sliced through Barbara like glass. "Mom," she called to Elizabeth, who was approaching with a camera. "Grandma gave me something homemade. That's so cheap." The word hung in the air between them. Cheap. A word never before associated with Barbara Maxwell, whose name appeared on donor walls of museums and hospitals across Chicago. Cheap. Applied to a gift into which she had poured hours of learning, practice, and emotional intention. Elizabeth's laugh joined Naomi's, along with a few of the watching friends. "Oh, Mother Maxwell, how thoughtful. I suppose at your age, crafting keeps the hands nimble." Barbara stood perfectly still, her face a mask of dignified composure. That revealed nothing of the earthquake occurring beneath the surface. This was the woman who had once fired a board member for questioning her judgment during a critical acquisition. The woman who had stared down union negotiators during the company's most difficult years. The woman who had buried her husband and returned to work the following week because thousands of employees depended on her leadership. And now she was just a joke. A quaint old woman making trinkets. William appeared at her side, his expression apologetic but silent. That silence spoke volumes. He would not defend her, not against his wife and daughter. Not here, not now. "I hope it serves as a reminder to stay true to your course," Barbara said quietly, meeting Naomi's eyes with steady purpose. "Every compass needs calibration from time to time." Then she excused herself with practiced grace, crossing the lawn toward the house without a single tear or sign of distress. Inside, She located the powder room, closed the door, and finally allowed herself 3 deep breaths, the only concession to emotion she would permit. In the mirror, she saw not the wounded grandmother, but the CEO who had weathered corporate takeover attempts and economic downturns, the woman who had made difficult decisions when necessary. "Very well," she whispered to her reflection. "Lesson received." When she emerged, she rejoined the party with perfect poise, conversing pleasantly with guests who had no idea of the seismic shift that had just occurred, or the decision forming with each passing moment in Barbara Maxwell's formidable mind. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing, that evening, long after the celebration had ended, Barbara sat at her cherrywood desk, the same desk where she had signed her first major acquisition contract 30 years earlier. The house was silent, except for the occasional creak of settling wood and the distant sound of Chicago traffic. Before her lay a folder containing the trust fund documentation for Naomi, a substantial sum accumulated over 22 years of careful investment, intended to launch her granddaughter into adulthood with every advantage Barbara could provide. Next to it lay the velvet box containing the rejected necklace, retrieved from where it had been carelessly tossed aside on a gift table. Barbara ran her finger over the compass pendant, feeling each tiny detail she had painstakingly crafted. "James," she said aloud, as if her late husband might offer counsel from wherever he now resided, "did we fail them somehow? Did we make it too easy?" She thought of her own beginnings, the daughter of a factory worker who had put herself through school by working nights and weekends, of meeting James, equally determined and hard-working, at a university fundraiser where she was serving drinks rather than making donations. How they had built something from nothing, learning the value of every dollar earned and every relationship nurtured. What value did Naomi understand? What had she learned beyond the ease of privilege? Barbara opened her laptop and navigated to her bank's secure portal. For several minutes, her fingers remained poised above the keyboard, unmoving. This decision, once made, would alter family dynamics forever. It would likely end whatever fragile connection remained between her and her granddaughter. It might even fracture her relationship with William, already strained by years of unspoken resentments. Yet something had broken today that could not be mended with silence or compromise, some fundamental understanding of respect and appreciation that no amount of money could purchase. With decisive keystrokes, Barbara initiated the transfer process. The entire trust fund, every penny intended for Naomi's future, would be redirected to establish a new scholarship foundation. She had contacts at Chicago Community Foundation who could expedite the paperwork, creating a program specifically for young women raised by their grandmothers, girls who understood sacrifice and gratitude because they had witnessed it firsthand in the women who had stepped in when parents could not. As she completed the final authorization, a curious sense of peace settled over her. This was not spite or revenge. It was realignment, a correction, of course, returning to the values that had guided her life's journey. The phone would ring tomorrow. There would be shock, tears, accusations. Elizabeth would reveal the full extent of her entitlement. William would vacillate between understanding and outrage. Naomi would perceive only the punishment, not the principle behind it. Barbara closed the folder and placed it in her shredder, watching as the documents detailing Naomi's inheritance were reduced to confetti. Then she picked up the compass necklace once more, securing it around her own neck, a reminder that even at 68, new directions were possible, new purposes could be found. "Sometimes the kindest gift is consequence," she told the empty room, her voice steady and clear, "and the truest inheritance is understanding." She would sleep soundly. Tonight, for the first time in months, tomorrow would bring its challenges, but Barbara Maxwell had never been one to shy away from difficult conversations. After all, she had not built an empire by avoiding uncomfortable truths. Elizabeth was the first to call, her voice shrill, with panic shortly after 9 the next morning. "What have you done?" "William just heard from the financial planner. They're saying you've emptied Naomi's trust fund. There must be some mistake, some hacker or—" "There's no mistake, Elizabeth. Warbara replied calmly, standing at her kitchen window with her morning tea. "I've redirected those funds to establish a scholarship foundation." The silence on the other end lasted 5 full seconds. "You can't be serious. Because of a stupid necklace? Because Naomi didn't fall all over herself thanking you for some homemade trinket?" "Not because of the necklace," Warbara corrected. "Because of what the necklace revealed about values, about gratitude, about the kind of person Naomi is becoming. This is insane. You're punishing her for not liking a gift? Do you have any idea what this will do to her plans? To our family?" Warbara sipped her tea. "I have a very clear idea. It will require Naomi to earn what she receives. It will teach her that relationships require nurturing, that respect once lost has consequences." William came on the line then, his lawyer's voice attempting reasonableness while barely containing fury. "Mom, you need to reverse this, now, before it goes any further. Naomi is devastated. She's been crying all morning." "I imagine she has," Warbara acknowledged. "Losing something often clarifies its value." "This is about your pride," he accused. "Your ego couldn't handle a little criticism from a 22-year-old. "Is that what you think this is?" Warbara felt a profound sadness settle over her. "Then I've failed as a mother as well as a grandmother." In the background she could hear Naomi sobbing, demanding to speak with her. William hesitated, then apparently handed over the phone. "Grandma, please." Naomi's voice was raw, stripped of its casual indifference. "I'm sorry about the necklace. I didn't mean it. I was just showing off for my friends. You know how stupid that was. Please don't do this. I need that money for grad school, for my future." For a moment, Warbara's resolve wavered. This broken voice belonged to the little girl who had once fallen asleep in her arms during thunderstorms, the child who had proudly shown her finger paintings and first attempts at cursive. But then she remembered the flat, dismissive, "Is this it?" The casual cruelty of "that's so cheap." The girl wasn't sad about hurting her grandmother. She was sad about losing her money. "Your future is still entirely possible, Naomi," Warbara said gently. "It will simply require more effort than you anticipated." "You're ruining my life!" The tears morphed instantly to rage. "After everything I've done to make you proud. 4 years of killing myself at Northwestern, graduating with honors, and this is how you repay me, by humiliating me, by taking away everything." "I haven't taken everything, Naomi. I've taken money." "If that constitutes everything to you, then perhaps this lesson is even more necessary than I realized." There was a rustling sound as William apparently reclaimed the phone. "Mom, we can work this out. Come to dinner tonight. Just the 4 of us. We'll talk it through like adults. I'm afraid I have a previous engagement this evening," Warbara replied. It wasn't entirely a lie. She had already arranged to meet with the Community Foundation director to establish the scholarship parameters. "But I'm open to a conversation when emotions have settled. In the meantime, I suggest you all take this opportunity to reflect on what truly constitutes value in a family." After she hung up, Warbara remained at the window for a long time, watching a pair of cardinals build their nest in the maple tree. There was purpose in their movements, cooperation, and care evident in each twig and piece of string they gathered. Nature understood what humans sometimes forgot, that building something meaningful required attention to detail, patience, and mutual respect. She touched the compass pendant at her throat, feeling its weight against her skin. It wasn't perfectly crafted. There were tiny flaws visible upon close inspection, but it had been made with intention and love, qualities that no amount of money could replicate. The phone rang 3 more times that day. Warbara let each call go to voicemail. Tomorrow would be soon enough to continue this painful but necessary conversation. Tonight belonged to new beginnings, to redirecting resources toward those who might truly appreciate them. As she prepared to leave for her meeting with the foundation director, Warbara paused by the photo that had occupied her mantel for 2 decades. Naomi at age 5, sitting on her grandfather's lap, both of them laughing at some forgotten joke. James's eyes crinkled with genuine joy, his large hand protectively covering Naomi's small one. "I hope I'm doing right by her, James," Warbara whispered. "Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that save us." She straightened her shoulders. and picked up her purse, stepping out into the early evening with renewed purpose. The compass at her throat guided her forward, pointing toward a north star of principle that had guided her life's journey, one that, perhaps someday, her granddaughter might come to understand. As Wabra drove to meet with Sam Martinez, the foundation director, she found herself recalling moments from Naomi's childhood, the bedtime stories, the Sunday afternoon baking sessions, the pride in her granddaughter's academic achievements. Had there been signs she'd missed, moments when she could have redirected this path, or was this current heartbreak simply the inevitable collision between generations raised with fundamentally different understandings of value? The community center where they'd arranged to meet was in one of Chicago's struggling neighborhoods, a deliberate choice on Wabra's part. The building itself was well maintained but modest, housing after-school programs, adult education classes, and senior activities under one roof. As she parked her luxury sedan on the street, Wabara noted the stark contrast between this setting and the manicured suburban landscape of yesterday's graduation celebration. Sam greeted her at the entrance, his handshake firm and his smile genuine. "Mrs. Maxwell, it's an honor. Your call took me by surprise. Usually endowments of this size involve months of planning meetings. Sometimes certainty eliminates the need for prolonged deliberation," she replied, following him to a small conference room where a young woman was already seated. "This is Destiny Washington," Sam introduced. "She's one of our success stories, raised by her grandmother from age 3, just graduated from University of Illinois with a degree in social work, and now running our mentorship program here." Destiny rose to shake Wabara's hand, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so young. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Maxwell. Mr. Martinez said you're interested in creating a scholarship specifically for girls raised by grandmothers. Well, it's personal for me." "Tell me your story," Wabra said, taking a seat across from her. "And please call me Wabra." As Destiny spoke of her childhood, her mother's addiction, her grandmother's unwavering support despite financial struggles, the challenges of being raised by someone of a different generation, Wabara found herself listening with growing certainty that her decision had been the right one. Here was a young woman who understood sacrifice, who recognized the value in small gestures of love, who had built her success on gratitude rather than entitlement. "My grandma worked as a hospital custodian until she was 72, Destiny explained, her eyes bright with emotion. "She saved birthday money, Christmas bonuses, everything she could to help with my college fund. When I got a partial scholarship, she cried for days. Happy tears, you know. She made me a quilt for my dorm room, spent months on it. I took it everywhere, even though my roommates teased me about it. That quilt meant more than anything store-bought ever could." Wabara felt something catch in her throat. "She sounds remarkable." She was. Destiny's use of past tense hung in the air between them. "She passed last year, 3 months before my graduation, but she got to see my acceptance letter to grad school. That was something." Sam cleared his throat. "Mrs. Maxwell, Wabra is planning to endow a significant scholarship fund, enough to support multiple young women through undergraduate and graduate education." Destiny's eyes widened. That would change lives, not just the girls' lives, but their grandmothers too. "Knowing your sacrifice has created a pathway." "Exactly," Wabra nodded. "The fund will cover tuition, books, and reasonable living expenses. But there's an additional component I'd like your input on, Destiny. I want each recipient to create something with their own hands, something for their grandmother. A tangible representation of gratitude, nothing expensive or elaborate, something meaningful. Like a legacy project?" Destiny leaned forward, clearly intrigued. "More like a reminder that value isn't found in price tags, that the most meaningful gifts often carry no monetary worth at all." As they discussed the details shaping the scholarship requirements and selection process, Wabara felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in months. This was right. This was meaningful. This was the legacy she wanted to build, not just for Naomi, but beyond her. Later, as they were finalizing the paperwork, Wabara's phone buzzed with a text from William. "We need to talk. This can't wait." She silenced the device without responding. Tomorrow would be soon enough for that conversation. Tonight belonged to new beginnings. "Is there anything else you need from me tonight?" she asked Sam as they concluded their meeting. He shook his head. "The funds have already been transferred. We'll have the scholarship announcement prepared by week's end. The first recipients could be selected for the fall semester." "I'd like to be part of that selection committee," Wabra said, "if you'll have me." "We'd be honored." Sam's expression was one of profound respect, the kind that couldn't be purchased with wealth or position, but had to be earned through action and integrity. As Wabra prepared to leave, Destiny approached her once more. "Mrs. Maxwell, Wabra, I just wanted to say thank you. Not just for the scholarships, but for seeing us. Girls like me, grandmothers like mine. Sometimes it feels like no one notices the work, the sacrifice." "Someone sees," Wabara said softly, touching the compass at her throat. "Someone always sees." Driving home through Chicago's evening traffic, Wabara felt a strange mix of certainty and grief. She had done the right thing, of that she had no doubt, but the price of that righteousness would be steep. William's anger, Elizabeth's resentment, Naomi's sense of betrayal, these would not fade quickly, if ever. Yet as she pulled into her driveway, Wabra realized she could bear that cost. Her worth was not measured in her family's approval any more than it was measured in her corporate achievements or financial assets. It was measured in alignment with her principles, in actions that reflected her deepest values, in the courage to stand firm when those values were challenged. Inside, her house welcomed her with familiar silence. But tonight, that silence felt less like loneliness and more like peace. The quiet satisfaction of knowing she had remained true to herself, even when doing so came at great personal cost. She made herself a simple dinner and sat at her kitchen table, the same spot where she had crafted the rejected necklace. Tomorrow would bring confrontation. Tonight, she would find solace in the knowledge that somewhere in Chicago, a young woman like Destiny would receive an opportunity she might otherwise never have known. "To new directions," Wabra whispered, raising her water glass in a solitary toast. The compass at her throat caught the light, gleaming with promise. What happens to us when we are dismissed, humiliated, or devalued by those we love most deeply? How do we find the strength to stand firm in our principles when doing so threatens our most precious relationships? Can a single moment of disrespect truly justify a response that will forever alter family dynamics? Naomi's callous reaction had sliced through years of connection, but was Wabra's decision to redirect the trust fund an act of righteous boundary setting or an overreaction fueled by wounded pride? These questions would challenge Wabra through the sleepless hours ahead, testing her resolve even as she remained convinced of her course. The following morning brought confrontation, as expected. William arrived unannounced at 9, his expression thunderous as Wabara opened the door. "You're not answering your phone," he said, brushing past her into the foyer. "We need to fix this now." Wabra closed the door calmly. "Good morning to you too, William. Would you like coffee?" "I don't want coffee, Mom. I want you to explain what you're thinking. Do you have any idea what you've done?" She led him to the living room, gesturing for him to sit. He remained standing, pacing the perimeter of the room like a caged animal. Wabara seated herself in her favorite armchair, hands folded in her lap. "I know exactly what I've done," she replied evenly. "I've redirected funds that were freely mine to direct. I've created educational opportunities for young women who will genuinely appreciate them. And I've provided Naomi with an opportunity to develop self-reliance." William stopped pacing, staring at her in disbelief. "She had plans, Mom. Graduate school, a down payment on a condo. Her whole future was built around that trust fund, a future you encouraged her to envision. Plans can be adapted, futures reimagined. I built my career from nothing. So did your father. Why should Naomi be denied the satisfaction of earning her own way?" "This isn't about building character." William's voice rose in frustration. "This is about punishment. You're punishing her for not liking your necklace." "No." Wabra shook her head. "I'm responding to the values revealed in that moment, the casual ingratitude, the public mockery of something created with love, the prioritization of status over sentiment. She's 22. Kids say thoughtless things. You're holding her to an impossible standard. Wabra raised an eyebrow. At 22, I was working 2 jobs while completing my MBA. I understood the value of sacrifice and appreciation. Age is not an excuse for cruelty, William, nor for the failure to recognize genuine effort and intention. William ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father's that it momentarily softened Yuarbra's resolve. Mom, please. She's devastated. Elizabeth is furious. This is tearing our family apart. All over a misunderstanding. Was it a misunderstanding when Elizabeth joined in the mockery? When you stood by silently, unwilling to defend either your daughter's behavior or your mother's feelings? Family requires mutual respect, William. All I've done is demonstrate that disrespect has consequences. So that's it? No second chances? No opportunity for Naomi to make amends? Wabra considered this. The funds have been transferred. The scholarship foundation established. Those actions cannot and will not be reversed. William's shoulders slumped in defeat. Then we have nothing more to discuss. He moved toward the door, then paused. Elizabeth says we should cut ties. With you entirely. That you've betrayed Naomi's trust and our family's stability. The words struck deeper than Wabera expected, but she maintained her composure. That would be unfortunate. But as recent events have demonstrated, I'm quite capable of creating meaningful connections beyond our immediate family circle. Is that supposed to be comforting? That you'd replace us so easily? Not replace, William. Expand. There's a difference. He shook his head, clearly unable to process her perspective. Naomi graduates next weekend. The ceremony's at 2. I assume you won't be attending now. On the contrary, I'd very much like to be there unless you're specifically uninviting me. William's expression was unreadable. I'll let you know. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with careful restraint that spoke volumes about his contained anger. Wabara remained seated long after his departure, feeling the weight of his disappointment and the precariousness of their family. Bonds. Had she gone too far? Had pride clouded her judgment? For a moment doubt crept in, but then her fingers found the compass pendant at her throat, and clarity returned. Stand your ground, she whispered to herself, words that had carried her through corporate battles and personal loss alike. The rest of the week passed in uneasy silence. No calls from William, no texts from Naomi. Even Elizabeth, usually quick to express her displeasure, maintained radio silence. Wabra filled her days with foundation meetings, finalizing the scholarship. Parameters with Sam and Destiny. They had already identified several potential candidates for the fall semester, young women of remarkable promise and equally remarkable circumstances. On Thursday, an email arrived from William. Ceremony at 2 p.m. Your presence would mean a lot to Naomi. No further comment, no mention of their previous conversation. Just an acknowledgement that, despite everything, family connections remained. Wabara spent Saturday morning preparing carefully for the graduation. She chose a coral dress that softened her appearance without diminishing her natural authority. Around her neck she wore not the compass pendant. That would be too pointed. A reminder, but a simple silver chain James had given her on their first anniversary, when they could barely afford such luxuries. Northwestern's campus was awash with celebration, proud families clutching flower bouquets and balloon arrangements. Wabara navigated through the crowds with practiced ease, locating the section where William had reserved seats. He nodded curtly as she approached, while Elizabeth turned deliberately toward another family, engrossing herself in conversation to avoid a greeting. She's nervous about the speech, William said quietly as Wabara took her seat. Valedictorian. You knew that, right? Wabara nodded. I saw the announcement in the university newsletter. She earned it. Yes, William agreed, a hint of pride breaking through his reserve. She worked hard. They sat in awkward silence as the ceremony began, applauding politely for each speaker. I'd wandered so far off course. We all lose our way sometimes, Wabara said gently. The test of character isn't avoiding wrong turns, it's how we respond when we realize we've made them. Naomi reached into her purse and withdrew a small velvet box, the original gift box, Wabara realized with surprise. I kept it, she admitted, even after that day. I couldn't explain why, but I couldn't throw it away either. She opened the box to reveal the compass pendant. Would you consider letting me wear it now? Not as a graduation gift, but as a reminder, a promise to do better. Have you ever had someone dismiss something you made with care and love, only to later recognize its true value? Have you ever had to rebuild trust after a painful rejection? Share your experience in the comments below. Wabra studied her granddaughter's face, searching for any hint of manipulation or insincerity. Finding none, she made a decision that had less to do with the trust fund or the necklace than with the fundamental question underlying their conflict. Was redemption possible after such profound disrespect? Could genuine change occur through painful consequence? Stand up, she instructed gently. Naomi rose, confusion evident in her expression. Wabara took the necklace from the box, unfastened the clasp, and stepped forward. With careful movements, that belied her age, she secured it around her granddaughter's neck, the small compass pendant coming to rest just below Naomi's collarbone. This isn't forgiveness, Wabra clarified, her voice firm but kind. Not yet. Forgiveness, like respect, must be earned through consistent action, not momentary remorse. But it is a beginning, a chance to recalibrate, to find your true north again. Tears welled in Naomi's eyes. Thank you, she whispered, fingers touching the pendant with reverence that had been absent during its first presentation. I won't disappoint you again. You might, Wabra replied honestly. We're human. Disappointment is inevitable in any relationship worth having. The question is whether we learn from those moments or repeat them. They sat together for another hour, the conversation gradually shifting from apology to possibility. Naomi shared her revised plans for graduate school, a teaching fellowship that would cover tuition in exchange for working with underprivileged students. She spoke of a small apartment she'd found to share with a classmate, of learning to budget for necessities rather than luxuries. And I've been thinking, she said hesitantly as their meeting drew to a close, about the scholarship foundation. I'd like to volunteer, maybe help mentor some of the recipients if that would be appropriate, if you'd allow it. Wabara considered this request carefully. I think that could be valuable, for them and for you. I'll speak with Sam and Destiny. As they said their goodbyes at the door, the physical distance between them had diminished, though not disappeared entirely. There was a tentative embrace, brief but genuine, and a promise to meet again the following week. After Naomi left, Wabra returned to the sunroom, picking up the handmade book her granddaughter had created. She traced the careful stitching, understanding now how much effort each binding represented, how many failed attempts might have preceded this imperfect but meaningful result. She thought of James, who had recognized from the beginning that their greatest legacy would not be financial, but philosophical. The values they instilled, the examples they set, the lives they touched beyond their immediate family circle. Later, that afternoon, Wabara called Sam at the foundation. I'd like to make an addition to the scholarship requirements, she said without preamble. Each recipient should not only create something for their grandmother, but mentor someone younger than themselves. Create a chain of guidance and gratitude that extends beyond a single generation. A legacy project that becomes a living legacy, Sam summarized with evident approval. I like it. Destiny will too. That evening, as twilight settled over Chicago, Wabra sat on her back porch watching fireflies emerge in the garden James had planted decades earlier. The flowers had changed over the years, some species thriving while others struggled, requiring adjustment and adaptation with each passing season. Much like family relationships, she reflected, constantly evolving, needing attention and occasional redirection to flourish. The compass pendant was no longer in her possession, nor was the trust fund she had established for Naomi. But something new was taking root in their place, something with the potential to grow beyond the boundaries of their immediate family, to touch lives they would never personally know. It wasn't the legacy Wabra had initially envisioned. It was perhaps something better, something with greater meaning and wider impact, a redirection rather than an ending. As darkness fell completely, she made a final decision. Tomorrow, she would invite William and Elizabeth to dinner, not to revisit past hurts or justify difficult choices, but to begin the slow, necessary work of family reconciliation. The path forward would not be easy or straightforward. There would be residual resentments, fragile new boundaries to navigate, trust to rebuild on all sides. But standing firm in her principles had created space for authentic growth, for Naomi certainly, but perhaps for all of them. The lesson had been painful, the price considerable. Yet watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky, Barbara felt a certainty that had eluded her since that moment of rejection at the graduation party. Some gifts were meant to be taken, back so that something more valuable could take their place. The widow CEO sat beneath the stars, no longer alone with her craft projects and memories, but connected to a future beyond herself, a future shaped by difficult decisions made with integrity and purpose. The compass she had crafted with loving hands had found its proper home at last, guiding not just one young woman's journey, but potentially many others through the foundation her pain had created. Sometimes the most powerful gifts, she whispered, to the night, aren't the ones you give away. They're the ones you redirect to where they belong. And in that redirection, value emerged. True north revealed itself. The path forward became clear, even in darkness. Would you like a powerful narrative hook to maintain the tension and the viewer's curiosity at this point? Perhaps something about how Barbara's relationship with Naomi would be tested again soon, or about Elizabeth's continuing resistance to this new family dynamic. The morning of William and Elizabeth's dinner invitation arrived with unexpected complications. Barbara received a call from Sam at the foundation. The first scholarship recipient selection meeting had been scheduled for that evening, and her presence was expected. The timing created a difficult choice between family reconciliation and foundation obligations, both representing different facets of the legacy she hoped to build. As she contemplated this conflict, Barbara realized that the path of healing would require more than one difficult decision, more than one sacrifice of pride or convenience. The real test of her commitment to both causes lay in how she navigated these competing demands, and whether the fragile new understanding with her family could withstand another rescheduled dinner. 2 weeks later, Barbara sat in the community center conference room listening as Destiny introduced the first 5 scholarship recipients, young women whose stories of determination and family sacrifice brought tears to the eyes of several committee members. One by one, they shared their educational goals, their relationships with their grandmothers, and their reactions to learning about the scholarship opportunity. "My grandma raised me since I was 4, a girl named Jasmine explained, her voice steady despite the emotion evident in her eyes. "She cleaned office buildings at night so she could be home when I got back from school. When I told her about this scholarship, she just kept saying, 'Someone sees us. Someone finally sees us.'" Barbara felt a profound satisfaction as the meeting progressed. This was purpose made manifest. The redirected trust fund already beginning to create ripples of opportunity and recognition that extended far beyond her original intentions. After the meeting concluded, she noticed Destiny in quiet conversation with Sam near the doorway. They appeared to be disagreeing about something, with Destiny gesturing emphatically while Sam maintained a more conservative posture. When they noticed Barbara approaching, they quickly concluded their discussion. "Everything all right?" she inquired, gathering her belongings. Sam and Destiny exchanged glances before Destiny spoke. "We've received an unusual donation offer. I think it's wonderful, but Sam has concerns." "What kind of offer?" Barbara asked, curiosity piqued. "A young woman wants to donate $10,000 to the scholarship fund," Sam explained. "Normally that would be straightforward, but this particular donor has requested to remain anonymous specifically to you, Mrs. Maxwell." When Naomi's name was called to deliver her address, Barbara felt an unexpected surge of emotion. Despite their current estrangement, the sight of her granddaughter, poised, accomplished, standing at the threshold of adulthood, filled her with complex pride. Naomi approached the podium with confident steps, her ceremonial robes flowing around her slender frame. She arranged her notes, scanned the audience, and began to speak. Distinguished faculty, honored guests, family, friends, and fellow graduates, her voice rang clear across the assembly. Today marks not an ending but a beginning, a moment when we step from preparation into purpose, from learning into living. Wabara listened with growing surprise as Naomi continued. Gone was the entitled, dismissive young woman from the graduation party. This Naomi spoke with passion about responsibility, contribution, and the privilege of education. She emphasized the importance of recognizing those who had sacrificed to create opportunities, of honoring legacy through action rather than words. True value, Naomi said toward the conclusion of her speech, isn't measured in dollars or degrees. It's measured in impact in the lives we touch, in the principles we uphold even when, especially when, doing so is difficult. Wabara felt William's gaze upon her, but kept her attention fixed on her granddaughter. Was this genuine transformation or calculated performance? Had the trust fund situation prompted authentic reflection, or was this merely a sophisticated strategy to regain financial favor? After the ceremony, they gathered at the designated meeting point. Naomi accepted congratulations from classmates and professors, handling the attention with a grace that reminded Wabara of James. When she finally approached her grandmother, there was visible hesitation in her steps. "Grandma," she began, her voice softer than Wabara had heard it in years. "Thank you for coming. Your speech was exceptional," Wabara replied honestly, particularly the section about measuring true value. A flush of color touched Naomi's cheeks. "I meant what I said. I believe you did. Today." Naomi glanced at her parents, then back to Wabara. "Could we talk? Just the two of us? Maybe coffee next week?" Wabara considered the request, searching her granddaughter's expression for signs of manipulation or insincerity. She found instead something unexpected, vulnerability, perhaps even genuine remorse. "Tuesday," she agreed. "My house, 10 o'clock. Elizabeth stepped forward then, her social smile firmly in place for the benefit of watching families. "Mother Maxwell, we're having a small dinner tonight. Just family. You're welcome to join us if you'd like." The invitation was clearly William's. Doing delivered by Elizabeth with all the warmth of a corporate merger proposal. Still, it represented an olive branch of sorts. "Thank you," Wabara nodded. "I'd be delighted." The dinner was predictably strained, conversation limited to safe topics like the ceremony's organization and the summer weather forecast. Elizabeth maintained frigid politeness, while William attempted to bridge the chasm with increasingly desperate small talk. Naomi remained unusually quiet, watching her grandmother with thoughtful attention. As Wabara prepared to leave, Naomi walked her to the door. "I'll see you Tuesday," she said, the words carrying a weight beyond simple confirmation. 10 o'clock, Wabara affirmed. "Don't be late." The weekend passed slowly. Wabara found herself alternating between anticipation and apprehension regarding Tuesday's meeting. What could bridge the gulf between them now? What words could possibly address the damage done on both sides? Monday evening, she received an unexpected call from Destiny Washington at the foundation. "Mrs. Maxwell, Wabara, I hope I'm not disturbing you," she began. "But something amazing happened today. We've already received 3 additional donations to the scholarship fund. Small amounts, but from people who heard about the program through our initial announcement. One donor specifically mentioned being raised by her grandmother and wanting to pay it forward." "That's wonderful news," Wabara said, genuinely pleased. "The program is resonating." "It's more than that," Destiny continued, her voice animated with excitement. "We've had inquiries from other community foundations interested in replicating the model. This could grow beyond Chicago, become a national initiative. The impact potential is huge." After they hung up, Wabara sat with this new information, turning it over in her mind like a gemstone, catching different light with each rotation. The scholarship, born from family pain, was already creating ripples of positive change beyond anything she had anticipated. Was it possible that the wound inflicted by Naomi's rejection and her own severe response might ultimately heal into something stronger, something with purpose beyond their immediate family circle? Tuesday morning arrived crisp and clear, a perfect Chicago summer day. Uwabara prepared coffee and set out a plate of the almond cookies Naomi had favored as a child. Simple gestures of hospitality, offered without expectation. At precisely 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Naomi stood on the porch, clutching a small package wrapped in plain brown paper. Gone was the designer outfit from the graduation party, replaced by a simple sundress that reminded Uwabara of the granddaughter she had known before college had reshaped her. "Come in," she invited, stepping aside. "The coffee's ready." They settled in the sunroom, awkward silence stretching between them as Uwabara poured coffee into delicate cups that had been wedding gifts 6 decades earlier. Naomi accepted hers, with murmured thanks, then placed the small package on the table between them. "I made something," she said quietly. "For you." Uwabara regarded the package with measured interest. "Did you?" After you redirected the trust fund, I was angry. Furious, actually. I said terrible things about you to Mom and Dad. Naomi's honesty was disarming. I blamed you entirely, called you vindictive, petty, cruel. Understandable reactions, Uwabara acknowledged, neither confirming nor refuting the accusations. Then I started thinking about what you said on the phone, about making something with my own hands, about respect. Naomi pushed the package toward her grandmother. I didn't sleep for 3 days. Just kept thinking about that moment at the party, how I'd treated you, how I'd been treating you for years, really. Taking, never really seeing you as a person, just as, I don't know, an ATM with emotional expectations attached. Uwabara remained silent, allowing her granddaughter the space to continue. I found information about the Scholarship Foundation online, Naomi said, for girls raised by their grandmothers. I read the stories of some of the potential recipients. It was humbling. She gestured toward the package. Please open it. With careful movements, Uwabara unwrapped the brown paper. Inside was a small book, hand-bound with careful, if inexpert, stitches. The cover bore a simple title, Lessons from Uwabara. I took a bookbinding workshop, Naomi explained, as Uwabara opened to the first page. 3 sessions. My hands were cramping for days afterward. It's nowhere near perfect, but the pages contained photographs, many Uwabara recognized, others she'd never seen, alongside handwritten reflections. Naomi as a toddler on Uwabara's lap during a business dinner. Naomi wearing Uwabara's oversized blazer in a childhood game of dress-up. The two of them baking cookies, flour dusting their matching aprons. Beside each image, Naomi had written memories, insights, lessons learned from her grandmother. Some were business principles Uwabara had shared during their Sunday conversations. Others were personal values demonstrated through action, rather than instruction. Together they formed a portrait not just of their relationship, but of Uwabara herself, seen through the eyes of a granddaughter who had been paying closer attention than anyone realized. I don't expect this to change your mind about the trust fund, Naomi said as Uwabara carefully turned the pages. I understand that decision is final, and honestly, I'm starting to think maybe it's right. Maybe I do need to learn these lessons the hard way. Uwabara looked up, meeting her granddaughter's eyes directly. The trust fund decision was never about punishment, Naomi. It was about redirection, about ensuring resources went where they would be valued appropriately. I know that now, Naomi nodded, and I'm not asking for it back. What I'm asking for is a chance to rebuild our relationship, to earn back your respect, to be worthy of the lessons in that book. For the first time in their long estrangement, Uwabara saw genuine humility in her granddaughter's expression. Not the calculated contrition of someone seeking financial restoration, but the authentic remorse of a young woman confronting her own failings. The compass pendant, Uwabara said, touching her throat where the necklace had rested during their previous encounter. Do you understand now why I made it for you? To remind me to check my direction, to calibrate my values, to ensure I was on the right path. Naomi's voice faltered. I wasn't, was I? She's asked that her contribution be earmarked for art supplies for recipients interested in creative pursuits. Uwabara felt a strange certainty settle over her. This young woman, she said carefully, would she happen to be a recent Northwestern graduate? Destiny's eyes widened in surprise. You know about this already? Not specifically, but I can make an educated guess. Warbara smiled slightly. Naomi's first paycheck from her teaching fellowship, I imagine. Sam looked uncomfortable. We didn't want to create any family complications. The donation can be declined if you prefer. On the contrary, Warbara said firmly, accept it, but remove the anonymity request. If Naomi wants to contribute, she should do so openly, proudly. This isn't about hiding from past mistakes. It's about building something better because of them. Later that evening, as Warbara prepared for bed, her phone chimed with a text message from an unexpected source. Elizabeth. William mentioned you're having dinner with Naomi tomorrow. We'd like to join if that's acceptable. There are things we need to discuss as a family. Warbara stared at the message, considering its implications. Elizabeth's overture, however, tentatively extended, represented a potential turning point in their fractured family dynamics. The dinner with Naomi had been planned as a follow-up to their initial reconciliation, a chance to continue rebuilding their relationship through simple, shared moments. Adding William and Elizabeth would change the tenor of the evening, potentially, reintroducing tensions that had only begun to ease. Yet family healing couldn't occur in isolated pairs. At some point, they would need to address the larger fractures that had developed among all of them. After careful consideration, Warbara replied, "You're both welcome 7 p.m. Bring dessert if you'd like." Elizabeth's response came quickly. "Thank you. We will." The following evening, Warbara prepared a simple but elegant meal, James's favorite. Pot roast with seasonal vegetables, fresh bread from the neighborhood bakery, a bottle of good wine. She set the dining room table with care, using the family china that had witnessed decades of celebrations and difficult conversations alike. Naomi arrived first, carrying a small potted plant. "For your kitchen window," she explained, presenting it with a shy smile. "The clerk at the nursery said it's nearly impossible to kill, so I thought it might be a good place to start." Warbara accepted the gift with genuine appreciation. A jade plant, symbol of prosperity and friendship. Very thoughtful. "I've been trying to pay more attention to meanings," Naomi admitted, looking beyond the surface of things. Her hand unconsciously reached for the compass pendant, which Warbara noted with satisfaction had become a regular part of her granddaughter's attire. When William and Elizabeth arrived 20 minutes later, the atmosphere instantly tensed. Elizabeth carried a bakery box with exaggerated care, avoiding direct eye contact with either Warbara or Naomi. "Tiramisu," she announced, placing it in the refrigerator. "From Bellissimo's." "Dad's favorite," Naomi observed, exchanging a glance with her grandmother. It was a small thing, this acknowledgement of William's preference rather than her own, or her mother's, but it signaled a new awareness that Warbara found promising. Dinner began awkwardly, with careful conversation about neutral topics: the unseasonal weather, a new restaurant opening downtown, an upcoming art exhibition. Gradually, as the meal progressed, William seemed to relax slightly, though Elizabeth maintained her rigid posture and minimal engagement. It wasn't until Warbara served coffee that Elizabeth finally addressed the elephant in the room. "Naomi told us about her donation to your scholarship foundation," she said, the words emerging with evident effort. "And about your response." Warbara nodded, waiting for her to continue. "I found it surprising," Elizabeth admitted, "that you would accept money from her after—" She stopped abruptly, seemingly unsure how to characterize recent events. "After I redirected funds that had been intended for her," Warbara supplied calmly. "The situations are entirely different, Elizabeth. The trust fund was redirected because its intended recipient demonstrated a lack of appreciation for effort and intention. Naomi's donation represents the opposite, a recognition of value beyond monetary worth, a desire to contribute to something meaningful." William leaned forward, his expression serious. "Mum, we've been doing a lot of thinking. About the trust fund, about your reaction to what happened at the graduation party, about our own complicity in Naomi's attitude." He glanced at his wife, who gave a small, tight nod of agreement. "We failed her by not teaching her better, and we failed you by not standing up when we should have. We've also been learning about the Scholarship Foundation," Elizabeth added, her voice softening slightly. "About the young women it's helping. The stories on the website are quite affecting. She hesitated, then continued with visible effort. William and I have decided to make a contribution as well. A significant one, if you'll accept it. Wabara studied her daughter-in-law with careful attention, searching for ulterior motives or lingering resentment beneath the offer. What she found instead was something unexpected. Genuine respect, perhaps even admiration, carefully concealed beneath Elizabeth's reserved exterior. "The foundation would welcome your contribution," she said simply. "As would I." "There's something else," William added, reaching for his wife's hand. "We've been discussing our priorities, our values as a family. Elizabeth and I have decided to downsize, sell the house in the suburbs, move to a smaller place in the city. Use the difference to establish college funds for those kids at the community center, the ones who don't have grandmothers to step in." Naomi nodded, clearly already privy to this decision. "And I'm going to volunteer there twice a week, helping with college applications and essays, skills I actually have that might be useful to someone else." Wabra felt a curious lightness in her chest, not quite happiness, but something adjacent to it, a recognition that from the painful fracture of their family bond, something new and possibly stronger was emerging. Not just reconciliation, but redirection. Not just healing, but growth. "James would have approved," she said quietly, the mention of her late husband causing William's eyes to moisten slightly. "He always believed wealth was only valuable if it created positive change beyond ourselves." They lingered over dessert, the conversation flowing more naturally now that the central tensions had been acknowledged. Plans were made for family dinners, for joint participation in foundation events, for a new kind of relationship built on mutual respect rather than obligation or expectation. As they prepared to leave, Elizabeth approached Wabra, while William and Naomi gathered coats from the hallway closet. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice low but clear. "Not just for the graduation party, but for years of resentment, of measuring you against standards I created from my own insecurities." Wabara regarded her daughter-in-law with new understanding. "We've both made mistakes, Elizabeth. The question is whether we learn from them." "I'm trying," Elizabeth admitted. "It's not easy recognizing your own pettiness, your own failure to see value beyond appearances." "No," Wabra agreed, thinking of her own journey these past weeks. The doubt, the questioning, the eventual certainty that had emerged from difficult choices. But it's necessary, and ultimately freeing. After they had gone, Wabara moved through her quiet house collecting coffee cups and dessert plates. The evening had unfolded in ways she could never have anticipated when she first opened that silver-wrapped package at Naomi's graduation party, when she first felt the sting of rejection that had set everything in motion. In the kitchen, she paused before the jade plant Naomi had brought, symbol of prosperity and friendship, of new beginnings and growth. How strange that from a moment of public humiliation could come such unexpected renewal, not just within their family, but extending outward to touch lives they would never personally know. The trust fund was gone, redirected toward purposes that aligned more closely with Wabara's values. But something more valuable had taken its place. A family, finding its way back to authenticity, to mutual respect, to shared purpose beyond material concerns. As she prepared for bed that night, Wabara thought of the compass pendant now worn daily by her granddaughter. She had crafted it as a symbol of guidance, hoping to provide direction for Naomi's journey into adulthood. Instead, it had become something greater, a catalyst for redirection that had altered all their paths, creating new possibilities none of them had imagined. Sometimes, the most powerful gifts weren't the ones you gave away. They were the ones you took back, allowing space for something of greater value to take root and flourish in their place. Wabara Maxwell, widow and former CEO, fell asleep with a profound sense of peace. The house was quiet but no longer lonely. The future stretched before her with new purpose and connection. And somewhere across Chicago, young women who had never heard her name were dreaming of possibilities that, without one difficult decision made with both pain and principle, might never have existed at all. For every grandmother whose love had been measured against price tags, For every handmade offering mocked in favor of something store-bought, Uabra had created a legacy of recognition and opportunity. She had transformed rejection into redirection, hurt into healing, loss into legacy, and in doing so she had discovered that sometimes the most meaningful paths forward emerge not from what we accept, but from what we finally have the courage to reclaim. Congratulations, type 9 in the comments so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel.